Well guys, we've had a beautiful week and a half or so here. Even a few days the fog lifted and the sun came out and it got warm up in the low 60s. So bees are busy bringing pollen in, brooding up. I actually got the orchard pruned, the earliest ever. It's pruned and cleaned up. I got a till on the garden. It won't hold, but at least I got some of the weeds rolled under. We'll control some. So I went through a lot of my dead out stuff and there was honey in them, so I'm gathered a bunch of my honey frames and I'm going through the colonies I have that are still alive and doing a check on them, see if they're brooding up, and adding honey if they need it, if they've got some empty frames. So it can be a catch-22 to have them brooding nicely at this time of year, because it's going to get cold again, and if they can't cover the brood, they'll lose brood. If they try to cover the brood and lose bees, they got a problem. Or if they can't get off the brood to get to food. So all of those can be an issue, because once they get that cluster just chilled and it's on the brood, if they don't want to leave the brood, then they can't get away to get to honey. So they can starve to death even with honey frames in the box. So we're going to pull some of these out. Some of these are, that one's got a little honey on it. Got like some foundation that didn't get drawn out. They don't need those in there. And empty frames on top. These bees are down in the bottom box. But they look, from what I can see from here, they look like they've increased in size. So I want to make sure they've got some food on their heads. And having honey right above the cluster allows them to come up to get to it, because the heat's going up. So that's a better chance of them actually consuming it that way. So I got a couple of really good heavy honey frames here, because they had some in there. I've got one that's got crystallized stuff in it and partially open and partially capped. We'll get that in there for them. Should have them in good shape in the upper box. See how they look down below. Now I had this one labeled as 5 frames of bees, and it looks like it's probably still about there. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are pretty well covered, and bees out flying, but their clusters spread out some right now. They've eaten their pollen patty right to nothing. That tells me that there's brood in there. If they're not touching their pollen, it's a good sign there's no brood, and sometimes a sign that there's no queen, because that would be one reason not to have any brood. In the summertime, when I start going through a colony and I find a really heavy pollen frame, I get excited. But if the next frame is also full of pollen, that usually means they don't have any brood. Because they're taking it right to them and feeding them with it if they've got brood. So when they've stored up 2 whole frames of it, it's quite a lot. Well, there's an empty frame. And once they start brooding up like this, they can go through a lot of stores quick. So they've got this one open. I don't know if you can see, it's shiny, and they're eating on it. But the back side's empty. And the problem with these cotton picking things, when they're clustered up like they try to be, they'll eat the center out of it and not reach over and get the edges and the corners. They don't, you know, clean it up in an orderly fashion. They get what they need to and move on. So you'll get in there and it's like, so these frames it's half full of honey but half not. Now I got some scattered capped brood in here. I've got larvae of every size and eggs, so she's working it pretty good. The other issue is that the frames that they start putting brood on, they consume all the resources off of rather quickly, and they're not bringing in resources when the weather's bad, so now they're stuck there with no way to get food when it gets cold. There's another capped brood frame. And the other side, yeah, this girl's trying to take off. That's why that pollen patty's gone. I didn't bring one of those with me. Maybe I'll hunt the dead out. So they got good pollen in this frame too, and more brood. Brood on that side, yeah, she's got brood on a bunch of frames. This girl's going to town. And I've had a number of these that did make it through that are doing just that. They're brooding up heavy. And like I say, it's a little scary because we're still a little early for it, but since I have a lot of feed I can keep on them, I think maybe they'll be all right. All right, that's got some on it, but it looks like our next ones may not. Yep, that one's pretty much empty. That one's empty. So though I wouldn't say this box has any more frames of bees on it than it had, as far as numbers, they're ready to expand. They've got, you know, brood coming good, and it will start to grow. So anyway, that's what I'm up to today, guys. Thanks for watching.